use this time to hear some reflections from poets, from regular people, um, some heavier than others. And to just see how they are hitting us this very moment. And any reflections and discussions I certainly welcome. Um, some of these I've gathered from things I've seen online and people who I knew were creating. Others I've taken from this book, Shiva, Poems of October 7th, edited and translated by Rachel Korazim, Michael Bonin, and Heather Silverman, which came out quite recently, as you might expect. And so gathered a mixture of what I saw, and knowing that there is a lot more that's out there. And so if anyone wants to peruse this after, I'm very happy to pass it around. We'll start with one. Well, I guess kind of ease into this as much as we can. I'm going to be sharing my screen with the text of the poems. I also have a couple of visual art pieces that I can share as well if we need a break from some poetry, or if you just take in information differently other than with the written word. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you can all see the text. I've tried to enlarge it to some extent, and we of course have seats more up front, and feel free to move as you need. And hopefully those of you at home can see just fine as well. So the first one comes from Michael Zatz, who unfortunately I don't know anything about. But this brief reflection called Illusion. Amazing how everything appears unchanged, even when nothing remains the same. And I believe the reflection was in approaching Israel via plane and seeing from above that it looks like the same place, but knowing down below that things are very different than when he was last there. And I was there in March of 2023. So for a family wedding, and seeing cousins that we hadn't seen in many years, and I've over this last year found myself thinking about the same thing of how much has changed in just a year and a half since I was there, and for the people there, how much changed just within a few minutes. And yet, in many ways, it's very familiar to those who are familiar with Israel, right? That life goes on, and Israelis are, in their own way, Israeli. My wife's aunt lives in Jerusalem, and Rachel was helping her aunt Phyllis with some banking stuff that she had to do, and that was right at the most recent attack from Iran happened. And so Rachel checked in with her aunt and said, "Oh, I went into the shelter with the religious family that's down the hall, and they brought their dog, and they brought some bamba to share. And I was with the widower who's across the way, and we have each other's keys, and we were all in there together. And I had really planned on doing all of the banking stuff today, but Iran got in the way of me finishing my errands, right?" And so it seemed like a very Israeli way of looking at the situation of, "Oh, I'm with these people who I know, and we're having some snacks, and of this terrible violence got in the way of what I really needed to do." But what a shame. So Israelis are still going about their lives, right? And if you knew nothing about October 7th, 2023, and you were just looking out at the street in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem on any given day, it might look normal, but we know that underneath, right, things are absolutely not. And people are absolutely not. And we are absolutely not. Anything else? Any other reflections on this first one? So the next one comes from Rachel Goldberg Pollen, the mother of Hirsch Goldberg, which was written quite a while ago when he was still hostage alive in Gaza, called One Tiny Seed. There is a lullaby that says your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. I have cried 1,000,000 tears in the last 67 days. We all have. And I know that way over there's another woman who looks just like me because we are all so very similar, and she has also been crying. All those tears, a sea of tears, they all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up, remove the salt and pour them over our desert of despair and plant one tiny seed, a seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, war, and hope, and see what grows? Could it be that this woman so very like me, that she and I could be sitting together in 50 years, laughing without teeth, because we have drunk so much sweet tea together, and now we are so very old and our faces are creased like worn out brown paper bags. And our sons have their own grandchildren, and our sons have long lives. One of them without an arm, but who needs 2 arms anyway? Is it all a dream, a fantasy, a prophecy? One tiny seed. Has anyone seen this one before? It's been going around a little bit. And obviously, things have changed since its composition. Right, so she wrote 67 days. So it gives you a sense of when this happened. And it, going back to Michael Satz's one, how very much is different now. I wonder if this poem, if she reads this one over again, how it feels to her, and now that her son is dead. And that, yes, you know, the ending of the question mark of is it all a fantasy for her has become a period, a statement rather than a question. This one, I think one reason that it speaks to me as well is that it acknowledges the pain all around, that tears are tears, and there's despair and still some hope, at least in her eyes. I saw a few exhalations when we finished this one. Would anyone care to explain any reactions? And I'm gonna, if you do, I have a microphone. I'll pass it around just so they can hear us.
Come on, crowd.
Well, I just remember at Rosh Hashanah service at another synagogue, basically the recitation of the eulogy she gave at her son's funeral, and in that, some of her words were about gratitude. She was giving God gratitude, telling God she was grateful that she had had this son for 22 years. and that she got to be his mother for 22 years. And I just felt that at the time very heartbreaking because she opens with giving gratitude. And, obviously this was very early when she had a lot of hope.
Thank you. All right. Many of the poems that I gathered, that especially from this book, are published both in Hebrew and with an English translation. So if anyone has any questions about the Hebrew of something, I can, if it's from this work, I can turn to it and we can try and decipher it as best we can. Of course, translating is always difficult, and then translating poetry is nearly impossible if we take the intent of the author into account. So as much as if there are questions, if I can explain or others, I'm happy to turn to that.
I have a reflection on the one that you read.
Yeah.
It starts by saying that there's a mother who looks very similar, and she's also been crying. And because the Gazans are also Semites, I was thinking it could be a woman in Gaza as easily as it could be in Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I read it, my assumption is that she was talking about a mother in Gaza,
Oh,
but she leaves it ambiguous, obviously, for us to interpret. I wanted to actually do one that I didn't put on the screen or on the document, if I can find it quickly. That does require some Hebrew, but not prior Hebrew knowledge on your part. And I'll try and read so you can hear kind of the way that they're playing with the language. So this one, if this is the correct one, is by Lital Kaplan, called Home Front Commands New Regulations for Small Talk. So there are a few greetings in Hebrew for hello, what's going on, how's it going, that she plays around with. The first one being ma nishma, that's the phrase, which is what's up. So it's what's up, ma nishma, canceled. Instead, use ma nishmat, which means what's shaken up. Ma nishbar, what's beaten up. Ma nishar, what's blown up. Ma kore means what's going on. So she says ma kore, banned. Alternatives, ma kores, what's breaking down. Ma nikbar, what's forever gone. Instead of the rude ma shlomcha, which means how are you, what's your shalom, ma shlomcha, we must frown in the face of our friend and ask ma milchamtecha, how war you, from the word milchama for war, instead of shalom for shlomcha. And instead of the standard response, forbidden by strict veto power, which would be etzli hakol beseder, I'm fine, in fact. It is required to say, Hakol besedek, everything's cracked. And the truthful ones will answer, Hakol beshever, everything is shattered. Hakol beshever, everything is shattered. So that, I think also hearkening back to the Satz poem of illusion, right, of this small talk that you might hear on the street, and what's not so deeply underneath is all of these other responses that people aren't actually giving, but we know they're holding within them. Let's go to Mom is Always Right by Itai Lev. Mom said that when I grew up there would be no army. Mom was right. I haven't yet grown and already there was no army. It wasn't there when I heard the screaming outside. It wasn't there when I saw Dad so scared and stressed. It wasn't there when the door was kicked in. It wasn't there when I hid under the bed. It wasn't there when we three pushed back on the door of the safe room. It wasn't there when time just stood still. It wasn't there when they suddenly entered. It wasn't there when they tore Dad off Mom. Mom had said that when I grew up there'd be no army. Mom was right. Now all I want to tell her is that she is always right. I cried, I screamed, and she is silent. I don't know. There are brief biographies in the back of the book. Although it is, Itai Lev is a musician, writer, and choir director. His books, he has a number of books, so he's not a child, he's imagining. Yeah, Noah.
Thanks.
So this begs the question, though, why would she say that there would be no army? What does saying that there will be no army mean? Because it can mean something presumably very positive,
Right.
that we have peace. So don't worry, we will have peace someday, there won't be an army. Maybe the little boy was saying, I don't want to join the army. And she said, well, don't, by the time you get old enough, there won't be an army for you to join, and you don't have to be like everybody else. So what does that mean? That's to me the challenging part of this. What does it mean to wish that there is no army? Is that a complete wish? What are the ramifications of the wish? What does it mean? It's challenging, I think. Again, assuming that that's why, but again, she could have been saying there's no army for other reasons. But I want to toss that out because I think that's where the tension in this poem is really based.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody else wants to take the mic, I will happily pass it along.
Right, and so it speaks at least to the moment for the absolute need for a defensive force, right? If nothing else. Because look what happened when there was no army available. So how far off the dream is from what the reality was.
And what does that say about the dream? I mean, are some dreams not worth, not worth having, but what do you do with the intersection of dream and reality? What does that say about I don't know, we still keep dreaming, and I can't imagine I can't imagine a life in which people wouldn't dream of something beautiful, like the end of war and hatred and all the things we were asking for. But knocking on the door.
And for so many generations, right, the state of Israel was thought of as the dream, right, that seemed perhaps similarly impossible, right, maybe in the Messianic age. And then it came about. But then, of course, we know that it is not as it had been dreamt, right? That the reality of it is far off from the dream, as miraculous as many saw it to be at its inception. All right, this next one is called A Good Day by Tal Shavit. I want to manage all the war rooms, to mobilize all the supply chains. I want to take care of all the children, of all the single mothers and those who are gone. I want to turn myself into protective vests for all the fighters, turn myself into iron domes over the heads of all the girls, all of them. To sustain all the families that were evacuated, that were broken, that were crushed. Return all that is lost, bring back all who are kidnapped. I want to collect all the donations and deliver them to their destinations. To pass all the messages, to make all the sandwiches, to oversee all the efforts. But on a good day, I manage sometimes to breathe, to drink, sometimes to call loved ones. On a good day, I manage sometimes to cry. I feel like this a lot. I don't know if this resonates with anybody else given what a good day looks like now and tempering what we had hoped we would do on a good day.
It certainly does resonate with me. I have been asked to be a CEO for this situation and get all the construction people out there to start rebuilding, especially with all the emergency evacuations that are taking place right now in our states. I've already dispatched a bunch of workers to start working on their homes, to start restoring them. So I can resonate with this firsthand as a first responder.
Yeah. So a good day might include some of those things that the poet was wishing for, but can't quite manage. But how wonderful that there are those who can. Thank you for sharing that.
This is Esmeralda. She's visiting with us today because Sixth and I rejected her. She walked all the way here, all the way back, and came back again. So welcome her.
Yeah, please welcome.
When I was looking at this, all I could think about is just being overwhelmed to do anything. So even to be able to cry is a victory.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask a question that how do you, at Esmeralda, I guess, how do you do it?
How do I do it?
Yeah, I mean, because but it's so hard to think of all the things out there, but you do it, you manage.
I do.
Yeah,
I make it happen.
that sounds easy, but not.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've got a crew worldwide. I have a crew worldwide dispatched in all of the states, and I've got warriors literally ready to rock and roll and just make it happen. So all I have to do is call and dispatch that particular crew, and they're ready to roll. They're on task. So it's a matter of recruiting the right people at the right time within each state. I have a representative in each state. All I have to do is just send a text, and they know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. it's my intention and motivation and the mechanism behind it. And because they're all Clemmer graduates, they know exactly what I need to say, when I need to say it. And I just need a code word just to be efficient with time. And I just send a text, and it's just an icon. They know exactly what I need to do and what I'm saying. And it's just a matter of efficiency of getting the crew out there on first responders. When I have people that are ready to dispatch food, they're already asking, where can I go jump and help?
Thank you. Yeah, Larry.
What some of these poems resonate with me is the fact that when you have this kind of an extreme loss on such a tragic scale, whether it's in Israel, the community, or natural disasters, or in our own families, is that it changes everything forever and nothing is ever the same again. My father died when I was 8.5, and nothing in my life was ever the same again after that. And that's true for everyone in my family. It changed all of our lives, and there's no way to go back and restore what might have been. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is that the sense that you can never restore what was or what would have been.
So if I can toot my wife's horn for a moment, she, on Rosh Hashanah, spoke about October 7th and used a teaching from Rabbi Benny Lappi, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, of Svara, the queer Talmud Beit Midrash. And Rabbi Lappi's teaching was that every culture and religion has a master story, and inevitably at some point that master story crashes and disintegrates, or is challenged in a big way. And for the Jewish people, right, maybe one of the first times our master story, which is the Torah, collapsed, was with the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, when they had to completely reinvent what Judaism looked like. And so Rachel talked about October 7th as another crashing of our master story, and that after that crash, that nothing can ever be the same, and that there are three responses that you can have when your master story crashes. One is you can sort of ignore the fact that it crashed and try to bring the pieces back together. So there were priests who, after the temple was destroyed, still tried to be priests, and people who followed them, and obviously they did not succeed. Another response is you can leave the culture and the story behind entirely, and there were Jews who, when the temple was destroyed, just went into Roman culture, and we knew nothing more of them. Or you can kind of, option 3 is the more complicated one of holding on to the things that still make sense and reinventing the story for this new reality. So the rabbis, which Rabbi Lappi said was about 10% of the population probably who followed them, took the Torah and completely reimagined what the religion that was based on the Torah could look like. And that's how we got Rabbinic Judaism, which we are all followers of in one way, shape, or form. And so what Rachel was saying is the same responses for the crash of our Israel master story on October 7th, and what does it mean to be in option 3 and to try and reinvent using some foundation, but acknowledging that there's been a crash. So similar to nothing can ever be the same again, and those who try to say that it will, or to go back there, are going to fail.
I heard her speak some years ago at Addis, Israel, And one of the things she said that really struck me was, she said that 100 years later, if you had taken the Jews from the period when the temple was destroyed and showed them what Judaism had become, 90% of them would not have recognized it as Judaism.
Absolutely. This is one that I love. There's a Rabbi, Hannah Yerushalmi, who's been posting a lot, and that at least in the Reform Rabbi Facebook group, we've been sharing a lot of her stuff. So it's resonated at least with some Reform rabbis, if not others. And this one in particular, I quite enjoy. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make it easier to see here. The rabbis advised, keep two truths in your pocket. One should read, I am but dust and ashes, and the other should read, the entire world was created for me. An 8-year-old has something else in his pocket. Confetti. Why? It's his emergency confetti, he says. During these raw days, he carries it with him everywhere, just in case there is good news. I love that. I love that. I think we should pass it out. It should have been, at the welcome table for the High Holy Days for us. So she plays off of this traditional text, right? That maybe you've heard different versions of, right? To keep us humble, but show us that we have worth, right? That you have these two pieces of paper in your pocket. But the 8-year-old doesn't need two different things, right? It's just waiting for the moment to use that one thing that they've got.
They're still naive and hopeful.
Right. Well, is it naive and hopeful to believe that there will be good news to throw confetti, right? Or is this, is she saying that there might still be good news, even as she says, during these raw days? But this line for me gets me, that it's not just when he remembers or if he goes into a certain place, but it's everywhere. He's always ready for it. And I think we can and have become so jaded with let's say news of talks for a ceasefire, right? And the hope that there would be, then everything breaking down. And so, can imagine kind of metaphorically throwing your confetti away in the trash, that good news isn't going to come. But I love this idea that being prepared and still holding on to it, and somehow being ready when the good news comes. I'm wondering about the possibility Okay, we're back. Yeah.
So you have to reshare.
I will reshare. Sorry, Zoom people, we lost you for a moment. Okay. Well, that was relatively uneventful, which is a good thing.
Sure is.
Um, There's our good news, right?
Yeah. Here's
Uh,
the confetti.
I'm sure there's like a AI Zoom thing that throws confetti all over.
There is.
Is there? I think my computer's too old to do that.
You borrow mine.
Okay. But I was saying, I'm wondering if this is kind of how we think about prayer. That we're putting it out there and hoping, but do we actually believe that these prayers will affect change, either in God or in the world, and still we pray, and maybe that's our version of carrying confetti everywhere we go.
When I interview 8-year-olds in my work, I look for this aspect of the 8-year-old because it can be inspiring and it can come true.
What do you mean that it can come true?
Well, there could be good news, and adults sometimes lose hope, and some children don't lose hope, and they have things to teach us because they don't. They don't have the life experience that tears down any belief in good news.
We hope.
Yes.
Presumably there are some 8-year-olds that have reached that conclusion.
Yes.
Let's go to another one of Rabbi Yerushalmi's poems, which is Reaching Far to Bless My Child. Is there anyone who would like to read it for us?
Sure.
Okay, can we get a microphone over?
Who said sure?
Reaching for to bless my child. At the dinner table, she spreads her open palm, ready to offer a Shabbat blessing. But tonight, the high chair is empty. With an ache in her heart, she takes a deep, lung-filled breath and extends her hands past their limits, a long reach on some imaginary plane. In some mystical way, her hands lengthen and follow a path stretching past the city limits, south, south, down south, and further south. Past acres of date palms, past miles of highway, past graveled roads, past border fence, searching and finally finding her taken child. She lays her stretched out hands on her crown and begins whispering ancient words with tears welling, spilling, and flowing. There, in the dark tunnel, she notices her child's captor, a simple man, just like any other man. She murmurs, "In this place where there is no humanity, for my child, my heart, my life, hishtadel lehiyot ish." Strive to be a human being.
So these words are actually from the Mishnah, from Hillel, who said, "B'makom she'ein anashim hishtadel lihiyot ish," in a place where there is no humanity or where there are no human beings, strive to be an ish, right? In Yiddish, we might say strive to be a mensch. So obviously, well, maybe not obviously, playing off of the Shabbat blessing, right? The priestly benediction that parents offer their children traditionally around the dinner table. And that Ruth and Scott included last night as a blessing for us all. Right, so not being able to and traditionally parents would put their hands on top of the children's head, which the mother here can't do for her daughter. So it was reaching down into a tunnel to offer these blessings, and has maybe even words of blessing for the captor.
When you read this, it suddenly struck me, it makes me wonder, this Yom Kippur, the weight of this Yom Kippur on not only those in Israel, but on the Jews worldwide.
Tell me more. For us or for you, what's that?
Because I think so often we say the words of who shall live and who shall die, you know, who shall be born and all of this. And I think this year, instead of people just reciting them, I think perhaps just instead of just reciting them rotely, that for a lot of people, they have a much deeper meaning, and more than a deeper meaning, that they finally understand what they mean.
So words that perhaps in other years were just kind of words or things that you've said by rote. All of a sudden you discover the intention behind the words and what their true meaning is.
You know, as you're reading, one more thing, as you're reading these two, it makes me wonder for October 7th, and the mothers, the brothers, the fathers, everybody within Israel, has this brought them closer to God, or has this separated them more from God?
That was a big question after the Shoah too, right? That some became more, let's say, observant or religious, that some left religion and especially God behind entirely. And there's a lot of post-Holocaust theology that talks about God hiding God's face at certain moments in history. And there are all sorts of different responses and takes on this, but with a range of with a range of beliefs and about, is there God? Where was God? What was God trying to tell us in some versions of this? And I mentioned on Rosh Hashanah that a lot of Jewish communities, at least in the United States, had an influx of interest of people being engaged. I don't know if that had much to do with God or just being part of the Jewish community or asserting Jewish identity, or reasserting it after leaving it behind for a certain point. But yeah, I haven't read anything after October 7th if it has changed people's faith. Any guesses? Yeah, Mark?
I don't know if any of these poems question God.
There you go.
Yeah.
Challenge. I just wonder if any of these poems challenge or question God in that same way.
Yeah.
Where were you
Yeah.
when my people were being slaughtered?
I'll read one for you. I didn't include that, but this is one my wife mentioned to me this morning. Um, so this one is called Kaddish by Asaf Gur. Yid Gadal V'Yid Kadash Shemei Rabbah, and no one came. Many thousands called to God on Shabbat morning, crying God's name out loud, tearfully begging God just to come. But God had ceased from all God's work. No God arrived, and no God provided comfort. Only Satan celebrated uninterrupted, dancing between kibbutzim and the festival of slaughter. And our correspondent goes on to report, sobbing all the while, that there is a burnt baby and an abducted baby. There is an orphaned baby and a day-old baby, still linked by the umbilical cord to his mother. He wasn't even able to learn his own name. That will be inscribed on the tiny headstone with a single date for birth and death. This is what the kibbutz looks like after Satan's visit. Turning the broadcast back to the studio, quiet now, they are shooting. They are also launching rockets. There is no government. There is no mercy. Just the screaming and the images that will never leave the mind. The 7th of October, 2023. So I think that's questioning all types of authority. The government that was supposed to protect and God that was supposed to protect. It's not one that I wanted to start with. It's not one to ease into. Or it is one to ease into. No. And I'll say this one is titled Prayer on the screen. So although it does not explicitly speak of God, just the title itself might give a hint to that. When you return, we'll sit just the two of us in the shower. You in the gentle water, I facing you. We'll gently wash your hair, erase all your memories. We'll sing to you the song of the hyacinth and of the rain tickling the window. I will carefully clean from between your toes every trace of the tunnels. I will tell you about the moon that shone so many nights when you weren't here. I will wipe the tears off your face. The gentle water will wash them away. I will braid your hair, dress you in pajamas, just the two of us in bed. And a caring hug, hope, love, fear, and a prayer that there will never be a next time. So is this one dealing with God or not? Right, where is this prayer going out to or into? Yeah.
To the extent it's a prayer, it may be a prayer for the return. If this is imagining a day when her child is back home and safe. It doesn't directly ask God anything.
Right.
Right?
Right, which maybe the absence of an explicit reference to God answers that question too. That it's a prayer she's sending out there, but maybe she doesn't have hope of a God that will hear or answer, but still has a feeling to pray somehow. Rachel.
I actually hear a recrimination in the last line because it's putting the lie in never again.
Yeah,
That if it could happen again, this time it can happen again.
right,
And it wasn't ever supposed to.
right. I wanted to see what the Hebrew is on that one, just in that last line. It's just Shelo tihye hapa'am haba'ah. Tefillah, yeah. And the star goes to a footnote that says this references Leah Goldberg's lullaby, the hymn for the hyacinth. So a tradition of an older Israeli poet, Leah Goldberg. So a lullaby of sorts. I know. This will be the last poem that I share, and this one also from Hana Yerushalmi. That speaks about Abraham Joshua Heschel, who wrote a book called The Sabbath. And he speaks of Shabbat as a sanctuary in time. So she's playing off of this well-known book and idea. Thank God Heschel taught that Shabbat is a sanctuary in time. No need for a wall or an ark or a pew or even a bema. Our ancestors linked time, not space, with sanctuary. You can be dreaming at sea or napping in the shade of a date palm or picnicking in the low valley, but still to sense Shabbat, you absolutely must know the day and time. So, dear Heschel, tell us, how do you tell time when you are in a tunnel? So this one, I think, spoke to me in part because I mentioned this morning that all the Jews around the world are doing Yom Kippur in some way, or at least know that it's Yom Kippur, even if they're not marking it traditionally, which I guess is not actually a true statement, because there are Jews who are in tunnels who probably don't know what day it is, and have lost track of time. So yes, about Shabbat, but also about this more rare day of Yom Kippur. And this being the first Yom Kippur since October 7th.
Rabbi Jake,
Yeah,
the first thought that came to my mind is, I'm gonna take off my Apple Watch. I'm gonna put back on a wind-up watch. Because if I'm in a tunnel, I have no power, and I'll lose time.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you're open to seeing a couple of drawings / paintings, all from one particular artist. Just knowing that some people respond to poetry and others, visual media is quite powerful as well. So these are by the artist Cherkassky, who has a number of these up at, I was trying to remember which museum in Israel. I think it's in Tel Aviv. But I'll get back to you on which museum because it's escaping me at the moment. And I didn't include everything, all of this series, but just 4 pieces of hers. So this one, titled "The Terrorist Attack at Nova Music Festival." There is this one entitled "Grandma and Grandpa." This one entitled "Simchat Torah," the holiday on which October 7th, the attacks of October 7th happened. And finally, this one just entitled October 7th, 2023. And while I was getting ready for today, it struck me that I hadn't seen many visual art pieces responding to October 7th and the year after. And as I was searching around for some, because I thought there must be, and these were just a few of what I could find, which were not many. And I'm not sure what to make of that, or if anyone else has encountered anything that might counter my experience, that there hasn't been a lot of art pieces yet, at least put out there or circulated around.
If you go to the Bet Mishpacha Facebook page, about 5 days ago, you'll see a piece of artwork that talks about that, and it was actually done by a member of the World Congress of GLBT Jews, a delegate from, can't remember if he's from Brazil or Spain.
Okay. Well, I'll see if I can get that up at this very moment. Thank you.
There was also a story on CBS Sunday Morning, a Sunday tour ago, about a museum in Israel that was collecting art from October 7th.
Mm-hmm. I saw, ANU, what? Oh, the National Library.
Oh, a library, yeah.
Right, well, I will go to the Beit Mishpacha, trying to find that post. Or my computer is being a little bit.
Rabbi, I have a question while you're looking.
Yeah, please.
I'm just wondering if anyone else, the style is completely different, the depiction is completely different, but from the first one of Guernica, that was shown, there's something in there that reminded me of Guernica. I couldn't pinpoint anything, but there's some, to me, there, and I'm just wondering if at least one other person felt that way. I was just curious whether anyone else did.
Was it this one you were referencing?
All of them, but that one's as a start.
Well, I'm having trouble finding the post, Barbara, that you were talking about at the moment. I'll stop sharing my
It's
screen.
actually the one
so
that
my
talks about the survey. It's like 4 down.
While you're all working on that, here's a
Yeah,
little
please.
bit about Hana Yerushalmi.
Yes,
He's
please.
also a member of a dual rabbinic couple. Her husband is the rabbi at Temple Beth Shalom in Annapolis.
Mhm. Right.
So she lives here, Ruth?
Yeah, well, in Annapolis, yes.
I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you for that context, Ruth. That's helpful. Has anyone else encountered anything that's helped you process the events of October 7th or beyond, whether a piece of writing or anything else that might be helpful for others? Or has anything in the Machzor over these high holy days struck you differently this year than it has in previous years? I'll share that one thing that jumped out at me was during, I think it's in the additional Al Chaitz, there's something about anti-Semitism, including in progressive or in queer spaces, or right, in our progressive communities, which obviously that predated October 7th and what the American Jewish community has experienced since then, but really jumped out at me this year in particular.
There was also a line.
On that one, this is Bruce. It struck me, I believe it said, of not speaking up about recognized anti-Semitism. That's not the precise wording, but the al-Hate was that we see it, and that is something I've, just like I practice anti-racism, I practice anti-Semitism whenever I can. But specifically hearing it and tolerating it without speaking up as to either I am a Jew or why do you say that? And it's predominantly among our peers who aren't Jewish and don't understand.
Yeah, Rabbi Jake, the one you were talking about, I think, was in the piece that Sabrina wrote, which was really interesting because that was written several years ago, but it really seems to have mushroomed, shall we say, since then. There was also a line, I think, in the additional al-Hate that talks about not educating ourselves enough to be allies to other communities, something like that. And my reaction was that we also need to educate ourselves to help make other people our allies.
Well, being at home and having a Machzor handy,
yes,
I can read the line I think you're talking about, which is for not advocating for others when they are victimized and not expecting others to oppose anti-Semitism. That's out of the
right. So that's from the additional al Chaitz, which I have here in front of me. Right, right. You don't happen to know the page number for what kind of a Machzor editor are you?
Somewhere between 1 and 6.
That was page 410, but
yes, I do. I have it up in front of me too.
Where?
It is page 419. The new Avinu Malkeinu Imenu Shechinatenu, who said, Avinu Malkeinu, this is Rabbi Sabrina Sojourner said, Avinu Malkeinu Imenu Shechinatenu, inspire us to be a contribution to efforts to end structural anti-Semitism, personal anti-Semitism, and bigotry, including in our progressive communities. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that one was from Sabrina Sojourners.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I commented on that. That was talking about the one in the additional It's right after
Right. So I had that. Yeah, that was the one that Ruth read.
Was that the one she read? Professing our commitment? No, that was
this
that one.
Oh, for professing our commitment to a more equitable and inclusive world insincerely, and for not educating ourselves to become better allies.
Yeah, because I heard a recent comment online from somebody talking about Jewish civil rights who said, we're very good at being allies, we're not very good at making allies.
I'll need to think about that.
Yeah, I thought that was very profound.
Any other pieces that hit you differently this year? The whole thing. I said pieces.
When we were doing Yizkor, I think what hit me is all the members of a congregation, like I've been around long enough that key members of our congregation who have passed away just in the last few years.
So Yizkor, remembering recent deaths within our congregation,
Right,
people we've lost recently.
When I was a kid, it's like all the kids were supposed to leave for Yizkor, and we loved it because we could go play. But I remember being told, you're not supposed to be in here unless somebody you know died, which to me, that's not true. It's like so improper. I used to take my kids to cemeteries because I didn't want their first touch with death to be something that was scary. So I'd show them cemeteries and how beautiful they were.
Mm-hmm. Mark.
Yeah, this touches on something I think a lot of American Jews have been feeling. And that is, particularly if we've been affiliated for many years with progressive causes, there is a kind of sense of betrayal that many have felt at those with whom we have stood in solidarity, who are not in solidarity with us now. And that's been a subject, obviously, of much discussion. What occurred to me here is that there is it's sort of an analog to what Israelis are always feeling about being isolated, being alone, being condemned on all sides. So I think we've had a bit of a taste of that with what's gone on college campuses and the sort of the portrayal of Jews as colonizers. This is not a familiar experience for most of us, but it is a familiar experience for Israelis.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we were preparing for the Pride March, there were a lot of discussions about security for our group in particular, and how the organizers were going to make sure that we felt safe and were safe, which was a new conversation. That being in a progressive space held some danger for us, which I think that the fear of marching in a pride parade and being exposed was not, the fear was not coming from what might happen from someone on the left, but from someone on the right. up to that point. So it was a new experience and a difficult one for a place where previously our congregation had felt so comfortable and like we belonged and had no question of showing up and wearing our Jewish stars. Well, I want to thank you for going through this with me this afternoon. I know it's not an easy way to spend any afternoon, and especially an already heavy day, to bring more heaviness to it. But I thought an important exploration to do together, given the date on our secular calendar and the upcoming date on the Hebrew calendar, with Simchat Torah not that far away. So thank you. And I hope that it helped you think through and process what you've been feeling the last year. And for me, I know this is not true for everybody. For me, reading words that people have composed for feelings that I have not yet been able to put words to is helpful. So knowing that there are things out there and there are collections out there that I can look to voice my feelings is a helpful thing. So again, if anybody before Mincha begins would like to take a look, I'm very happy for you to peruse this book. And Gemar Chatima Tova to you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Jake.